What if I told you that the most powerful tool in a revolution wasn't a slogan, a speech, or a protest sign, but a steaming bowl of soup? That across history, from underground movements in apartheid-era South Africa to Black Panther breakfasts in Oakland, food has played a pivotal role not just in survival, but in resistance, that even today, in cities across the world, activists gather not around war rooms, but around kitchen tables, chopping vegetables, feeding communities, and cooking up change. Food has always been more than just a basic need. It is a symbol of who we are, what we value, and how we care for each other. It tells the story of power, who has it, who lacks it, and how it can be reclaimed. This is not just a story about what's on our plates. This is a story about people, power, protest, and the role that food plays in transforming the world. Welcome to the role of food in social justice movements. Let's take a deep, delicious, and enlightening journey through history, politics, culture, and the meals that moved mountains. Food is so much more than just something to eat. It's been used as a tool of oppression and liberation, as a symbol of unity and defiance, and as a powerful catalyst for social justice movements. Whether it's the simple act of sharing a meal or the protests surrounding food scarcity, food has always been at the heart of social justice. Today, we're diving deep into how food has shaped social justice movements around the world. Hey everyone! You're watching the legendary Feasts, your go-to destination for food history, where we unravel the incredible stories behind what we eat. If you love exploring the connections between culture, history, and cuisine, go ahead and subscribe, because we're cooking up some serious knowledge. Now, today's topic is especially close to my heart, because it's about the power of something so everyday, so universal, and yet so profoundly political: food. We all eat. But not all of us have access to food. And for millions of people throughout history, and today, food is a battleground. It's been used to control, to liberate, to silence, and to amplify social justice movements, from civil rights to anti-colonial revolutions, from climate protests to indigenous land rights campaigns, have always had one common denominator: food. So how exactly does food intersect with justice? Let's dig in. Let's go back to the plantations of the American South. Enslaved Africans, stripped of their land, freedom, and often their names, still found power in food. They grew secret gardens behind cabins, cooked with techniques passed down through generations, and transformed scraps into soulful, sustaining meals. The act of cooking, of preserving tradition, was resistance. Fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement. In 1960, 4 Black college students staged a sit-in at a Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. They were not protesting food itself, but their denial of access to eat as equals. Their protest began a wave of sit-ins across the South. That lunch counter wasn't just about coffee and pie. It was about dignity. In South Africa during apartheid, freedom kitchens were established in Black townships to feed activists and their families when political unrest disrupted normal life. These kitchens were often raided by the government, but they kept cooking, kept feeding, kept resisting. The food nourished the body, but more importantly, it nourished the movement. From the struggle for independence in India to modern food justice movements in the Philippines, we'll explore how food has been intertwined with struggles for equality, freedom, and human rights. Hello and welcome back to the legendary Feasts, the place where we explore not only the history of food but also its immense power to shape culture, politics, and society. If you're fascinated by the ways food intersects with history, activism, and culture, make sure to subscribe and join the journey. Now, we often see food as simply a means to nourish the body, but it's much more profound than that. Throughout history, food has served as a form of resistance, a means of reclaiming dignity, and an expression of protest against injustice. From the Black Power movement in the US to the hunger strikes in India, food has played a role in everything from colonial resistance to civil rights and economic equality. Today, we're going to explore some of these stories, not just from the West, but from Asia, where food has been a central part of social justice movements and cultural survival. We'll talk about everything from India's Salt March to rice riots in Southeast Asia, as well as modern food justice movements in places like China, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So, Let's dive in and explore how food has been used as both a weapon and a healer in the fight for justice. But before we get into it, let me ask you this: what's the most powerful food-related protest or social movement you've heard of? Or perhaps, have you ever been involved in a food justice initiative in your community? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. Maybe your story will even make it into our next video. Let's begin with a look at food's role in resistance, not just as sustenance but as a means to fight back against oppression. In the American South, during the time of slavery, food was used by enslaved African Americans as an act of resistance. While their physical bodies were controlled, their spirit was fed through food. Community gardens, often hidden away, were places where people reclaimed autonomy over their lives. Enslaved individuals grew their own crops, made meals from scraps, and passed down culinary traditions that sustained their culture and their resistance to their oppressors. Fast forward to the Civil Rights Movement, where food again became a form of resistance. In 1960, Black college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, initiated a sit-in at a segregated lunch counter. Their protest wasn't just about food, it was about demanding dignity, equality, and human rights. Over the following months, similar sit-ins spread throughout the U.S., and suddenly, the lunch counter, a place where people eat, became the site of a battle for racial justice. In 1969, the Black Panther Party launched one of the most revolutionary food programs in American history, the Free Breakfast for Children program, every morning, at community centers and churches across the U.S. Children from underserved neighborhoods were welcomed with warm, nutritious breakfasts. Pancakes, eggs, milk, fruit. No questions asked. By 1971, the program was feeding over 20,000 children a week, but this wasn't just about hunger. It was a radical critique of the U.S. government's failure to care for its citizens. It said, "If you won't feed our children, we will." The FBI labeled it a threat. Why? Because a full stomach is power. Because when people are fed, they learn, they grow, they organize. Food became a political message, a weapon against systemic neglect. We also see food's role in South Africa, where during the apartheid years, Black South Africans created freedom kitchens to feed political activists and their families. These underground kitchens not only nourished the body, but they also helped keep the spirit of resistance alive in a time of extreme oppression. But what about Asia? Food's role in social justice and resistance in India and Southeast Asia is just as powerful. In India, food has played a monumental role in the struggle for independence from British colonial rule. Perhaps one of the most famous examples is the Salt March in 1930, led by Mahatma Gandhi. The British colonial government had a monopoly on salt, which was essential to Indian life, and they taxed it heavily, making it expensive for the poor. Gandhi led a 240-mile march to the coastal town of Dandi to make salt from the sea, directly defying British law, but it wasn't just about salt. It was a statement of self-sufficiency and non-violent resistance. The act of making salt symbolized the Indian people's desire for independence and self-determination. Gandhi's march ignited a national movement, and it showed that food, not just politics, could become a weapon of protest. Salt, a simple foodstuff, became a symbol of freedom. Moving beyond the Salt March, let's look at how food justice intersected with India's post-independence struggles. The Green Revolution of the 1960s, promoted by the Indian government, aimed to increase food production using modern farming techniques. However, this push for industrialized farming led to environmental degradation and harmed the livelihoods of small-scale farmers. This food crisis led to movements such as the Chipko movement in the 1970s, where villagers in Uttarakhand, then part of Uttar Pradesh, embraced a non-violent strategy to prevent deforestation and protect their food sources. They hugged trees to prevent them from being cut down by corporations seeking to expand agriculture. Food sovereignty, the right to control one's own food systems, became central to many of these movements. Farmers began fighting against the commercialization of their land, struggling to protect their agricultural heritage and the foods that had sustained them for generations. In Southeast Asia, food has been similarly central to many struggles for independence and justice. Let's look at the Vietnam War. During this brutal conflict, food became a tool for survival. The Vietnamese used underground rice tray systems, where food was secretly distributed to guerrilla fighters. This was not just about feeding people, it was about sustaining resistance. The simple act of sharing rice became a symbol of their unbreakable unity. In Thailand, rice is not just a staple, it's sacred. The country's rice farmers have long fought for their economic survival against neoliberal policies that threatened their livelihood. The Thai farmers' protest in the 1980s and 90s was a response to the government's push to open up the rice market to foreign competition. Farmers took to the streets to demand better prices and fair treatment. Their right to rice became a fight for sovereignty. Similarly, in the Philippines, food justice became critical during the Marcos dictatorship. Activists used food as a form of resistance, through hunger strikes and the establishment of community kitchens, to draw attention to the brutal regime. The people's fight for freedom was nourished by these acts of defiance. In Chile, during the brutal dictatorship of General Pinochet in the 1970s and 80s, people turned to each other for survival. They created las communes, or common pots. Women, often the backbone of the resistance, gathered ingredients, cooked together, and fed entire neighborhoods. These weren't just soup kitchens, they were acts of courage. Places of information sharing, mutual aid, and resistance. In Venezuela, Bolivia, and Argentina, similar systems emerged. In crisis, food became the glue holding communities together. Even in refugee camps and war zones today, communal cooking is not just practical, it's emotional. A reminder that people are still human, still whole, still worthy of dignity. In the 21st century, food sovereignty continues to be an essential part of social justice in Asia. In India, for example, the Akshaya Patra Foundation runs a massive program that provides free school meals to millions of children every day. This initiative is not just about feeding hungry children, it's about creating an educational pathway and ensuring that children from poor families can access education and a better future. In China, food safety has become a significant political issue. In recent years, there have been widespread protests about the contamination of food supplies, from toxic milk scandals to unsafe vegetables. People have risen up to demand better regulations and government accountability, with food being at the center of their demand for dignity and rights. In Indonesia, small-scale farmers are fighting against the expansion of corporate agriculture that's threatening traditional farming methods. Movements like the People's Food Sovereignty Movement are pushing back against the influence of multinational corporations and advocating for locally grown, sustainable food. In Japan, the food justice movement is closely tied to preserving traditional foodways and fighting against the globalization of food. Kimchi, sushi, and udon are not just food items, they are part of the nation's cultural resistance against the erosion of local practices by industrial farming and global food corporations. Let's move into the modern era, food deserts. You've heard the term. But behind it lies a brutal truth. In many cities, especially in low-income or black and brown neighborhoods, there are no grocery stores. No fresh produce. Just fast food and corner stores. This is structural injustice. Movements like Soul Fire Farm in upstate New York are fighting back. This Afro-Indigenous-centered farm not only grows organic food, but trains future generations of BIPOC farmers and teaches food sovereignty. In urban areas, community gardens, rooftop farms, and local co-ops are rising. These aren't trends, they're revolutions. Quiet, green, and deeply powerful, because whoever controls the food system controls the people. Food is also about belonging. Throughout history, marginalized groups have used cuisine to assert their identities. Mexican Americans in the Southwest, for example, preserved their foodways under pressure from assimilation policies. The taco became not just a meal, but a statement. Chinese immigrants, heavily discriminated against in the 19th century, opened restaurants to survive. Their food was mocked, banned, policed, but they kept cooking. Today, Chinese cuisine is one of the most celebrated and widely consumed foods in the world. That's culinary justice. Indigenous chefs today are reviving ancestral ingredients, corn, bison, wild rice, not just for flavor, but to heal. To reclaim land. To rewrite narratives. Food is history. Every bite is a story of survival, resilience, and pride. In our modern digital era, food activism has gone online. You'll find TikTokers promoting food justice, Instagram chefs highlighting indigenous recipes, YouTubers teaching foraging, zero-waste cooking, and anti-capitalist food systems. Movements like #NoMoreFoodWaste and #SupportLocalFarmers farmers are gaining traction globally, and grassroots orgs like Planting Justice, the Sylvia Center, and La Via Campesina are blending policy, education, and agriculture to build a better future. Even your local farmers market is part of this tapestry. Because every dollar spent on ethical, local food supports justice, not just flavor. So here's the truth we often forget in the bustle of daily life: food is not just something we eat. It's something we fight for. Something we share, from hunger strikes to soup kitchens, from backyard gardens to international movements. Food has always been central to the quest for justice. You, yes, you, can be part of this. Support community fridges. Volunteer at food banks. Learn about your local food history. Eat consciously. Teach your kids where their food comes from, because every bite is a political act. Every meal can be a message. Let's honor the legacy of those who cooked for justice, fed movements, and believed in a better world, one dish at a time. From the simple grain of rice to the complex and deeply meaningful rituals of sharing meals, food has been the foundation of many social justice movements across Asia and beyond. It has served as a tool for resistance, a method for organizing, and a symbol of hope. As we've seen today, food can nourish us in ways that go far beyond the physical. It can help build communities, protect cultures, and empower people to stand up for their rights. And as we look to the future, food justice will continue to play a key role in the struggle for equality, sustainability, and freedom. Thank you for joining me in exploring the deep and powerful role food plays in shaping the world around us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share your thoughts below on how food has been part of movements in your own country. Until next time, keep fighting for justice, one plate at a time.